I finally done it. Here in my hands, I hold the blueprints to build a real, authentic Springlock Suit. They said it was impossible. They said it couldn't be done. But shouldn't. They said it shouldn't be done. Ah, gotcha. Yeah, so we got a little bit of a problem. Welcome back to the Chip Tide Show, where I'm on a quest to build my very own Springlock Suit from the world of Five Nights at Freddy's, the way that a real engineer would. In the first two parts, we defined our project requirements and used them to refine some conceptual designs. You know, all the stuff that William or Henry or, I don't know, whoever made these things in the lore nowadays completely skipped to wind up with this. And this episode, well,
this is where the fun begins.
Because we're entering the DDR, the part of the project where you bust a groove to some royalty-free music. Oh yeah. And then, you do a detailed design review. That's what the letters stand for. But hey, maybe if engineers got to play more old arcade games, I'd still be doing it. In case you missed the last two episodes and have not yet had your worries assuaged about someone making, well, this, you totally should go and watch them. But as a refresher, I held a little vote based on our two most promising designs. And you all overwhelmingly thought that the design inspired by a car's clutch would be the coolest. Literally, a whole 91% of you. So here's a little recap of the design that we're going in with. Instead of finding a way to safely and reliably pull apart an endoskeleton of an animatronic to create space for a guy inside, we're gonna make an exoskeleton. All of the supports and motors will be built into the frame itself, and the inside will always be open, so you are never in harm's way. Instead of using spring locks to do this, we'll use them to decouple the motors and hold them in place while in suit mode, so you don't have to fight against them to move around, and hold them back in place when in animatronic mode so that the limbs can move. And now, in the previous episode, I proposed using a friction disc, like a normal car's clutch does, but a few of you brought up some good points. We're going to want to use tension springs in our spring lock, which will ensure that the failure state is the suit mode, not the animatronic mode. That way, you'll never suffer a spring lock failure while wearing the suit, making you an unwilling puppet as the motors suddenly start making you flossing for the kids. However, mixing tension springs designed to pull things apart with a friction disc that's meant to be pushed together probably isn't the best idea. All it would take was the locks to get a little bit loose before your $1 million animatronic stops working. Not catastrophic from a safety perspective, like this, but definitely annoying. So, as one final change before getting into the detailed design, I decided to swap out the friction disc for a set of gears. This is less accurate to a real clutch mechanism, but it's going to give us a little more wiggle room if things get a little loose here and there. So with that in mind, it's time to properly enter the detailed design phase of the project. The goal of the design phase is to create a full 3D model of the assembly and a set of dimensioned drawings that you could then send off to a machine shop or maybe a 3D printer if you're feeling fancy, giving you all the parts you need to build and test your prototype. And now, because we're doing something real experimental here, I'm not going to design and build the whole suit right out the gate. Instead, we're going to start with a simple prototype of one joint, the elbow. This will allow us to see how everything works in practice, fine-tune the design, and fix any problems before building the whole thing, and then having to take it all apart when we find out that it actually sucks. So, let's design ourselves a proper spring lock elbow. I'll show you all the cool software that engineers use to make 3D models in a minute, but I generally like to start off by creating a little sketch of the thing that I'm trying to make so that I have a basic idea of all the parts I'll need to model and how it all goes together. Nothing super detailed. I normally wouldn't even show this off in a design review, just enough so that I can sort of see the assembly in my head. But this is just my own personal process. I know some people who just jump right into the modeling to fiddle around with stuff in 3D as they go, and others who make a concept drawing so detailed that I'm like, hey man, I think you're actually done. And I gotta say, it's been 2 years now, but this really took me back to my engineering days. This part of the job, the designing and problem solving, thinking about how all this stuff can actually come together, was always my favorite part, but I didn't get to do it as much as you think. As you can clearly tell if you've been keeping up with the series so far, there's a lot of extra steps in engineering that you don't always think about. Another thing I forgot was just how long this sort of thing takes, and how strangely exhausting it can be. Like, I know it sounds silly, but it's weird how much sitting at a desk and staring at a screen for 2 days straight can take out of you. Which is why I'm glad to say that this video is sponsored by FlexiSpot and their new E7 standing desk. It's a desk that, get this, you can stand at. Now, y'all know me, I'm a science guy, and I wouldn't promote a product if I didn't believe in it, but the science here actually does check out. If you're sitting all day long, then you're not spending a lot of energy by engaging the muscles in your legs. And if you're not regularly spending a lot of energy, then your body's not going to produce as much energy, and you're going to feel tired all the time. There's a ton of research to suggest that standing for periods of time, and specifically switching between standing and sitting throughout the day, can help increase your energy and improve your vascular health. And the E7 desk from FlexiSpot makes this process so easy, you really got no reason not to do it. Check it out. I'm sitting here working, I press a button, and bang, I'm standing. And when I'm done, boom, back to sitting. You can easily adjust it to your preferred height and set up to 4 presets, and it's got these cool motorized legs that can easily and smoothly lift up to 355 pounds without you having to lift a finger. Unless you want to make it look like you're moving it with your mind, which is completely valid. And I'm only like 50% joking there. It's so cool, guys. I genuinely really like this desk. Another thing I noticed is that this thing is sturdy. Like, check it out. Even when it's moving or all the way up, you don't gotta worry about your stuff falling off. And if you're more about form than function, well, don't worry. They got all sorts of frame colors and desktops that you can mix and match on their website. And guess what? Their New Year's sale is still going on until January 11th. So if you're quick, you could save literal hundreds of dollars on a ton of things on their store, including your very own beautiful E7 standing desk. So what are you waiting for? It's a new year, the perfect time to get a new desk that's gonna take care of you. So head over to FlexiSpot.com, linked in the pinned comment, and use the code YTE730 to get $30 off your next purchase, on top of that New Year's sale. And thanks again to FlexiSpot for sponsoring this video. Now, let's get back to designing some questionable mascots. What you're looking at right now is a computer-aided design program, or CAD for short, which is an engineer's bread and butter. You know that scene in Iron Man with like the hologram table thing? It's basically that, but you know, without the hologram, because that's impossible. I'm starting off with a 2-dimensional sketch of the part that I want to make, which I can then extrude up into a solid part. Just keep adding in more extrusions and cuts until you have the form that you want. The program that I'm using right now is called Fusion 360, because I had a free trial version, but there's a whole bunch out there that basically do this exact same thing. You can also assemble a bunch of parts together to make sure that everything fits, and help you figure out how big the next part should be. I actually didn't end up needing to create that many custom parts for this project, which was by design. If you work for an engineering company, then you'd have access to a machine shop where you can make any custom component you need on the company's dollar. I don't have that. So instead, I went to every engineer's best friend, McMaster Car, which is kind of like the Amazon for like screws and bolts and stuff. They let you download a 3D file for basically any component on there, which you can then add in to your digital assembly. Creating the exoskeleton frame was actually pretty simple. I just modeled a few basic circular brackets with holes for threaded rods to go through. Pop some nuts on either end of the bracket to hold it in place, and you're good to go. Now, annoyingly, I couldn't find rods of the exact length that I wanted, and again, I don't have access to a shop with like a bandsaw to cut down longer ones, so I ended up just joining two shorter ones together in the middle. It ain't pretty, but it'll do. This creates a nice static frame that can fit around your arm. The next step is to make it bend. For that, I modeled some little housing bits for a simple rotational bearing, which will allow the joint to move more smoothly. I sized the holes in such a way that the bearings should press in nice and snug, but just to be safe, I also included a lip to catch them on the outside, and then the inner part of the joint will come in on the other side to sort of sandwich them in place. And just like that, we got ourselves a nice little elbow joint. The final step is to spring-lockify it. You may have noticed this big old beam on the outside of the forearm. This is called a T-slotted framing rail, and they're great for prototypes like this. A buddy of mine from college turned me onto these, and I use them all the time. It's made from aluminum, so it's relatively light, and what you do is get a bunch of these little things called weld nuts, and slide them into the slot. Tighten those nuts down with a bolt, and you can lock them in place anywhere along the length of the rail. It makes it super easy to make little adjustments or connect a bunch together to make a big old frame or something, or you could always just leave that nut a little loose, giving you a quick and dirty slide. Just the thing we need for our clutch. Now obviously in a final product, it would be a lot better to have a dedicated linear slide piece, but this was cheaper and easier, so I'm doing it. So here's how the spring lock mechanism is going to work. Attached to the end of this joint is something called a bevel gear, designed to fit together at a 90-degree angle. This allows us to change the angle of our shaft because the second bevel gear is attached to the end of a cheap servo motor that I found for RC cars. That servo motor is attached to a custom slide piece which can fit right into the T-slotted frame to slide back and forth. There's only two more things we need to complete this Springlock suit. The spring and the lock. Seems pretty important. The spring is pretty easy. I found a relatively short 1-inch long tension spring with loops on the end. It has a spring rate of 5.5 pounds per inch, which is honestly way stronger than we need, but for some reason it was cheaper than the weaker ones, so I'll take it. Then I can use some bolts and nuts to hold either end of the spring in place. One on the back end of the motor slide piece, and another locked into the frame. Now we can pull the motor forward to engage the gear, and when we let go, the spring will pull it back. The final step is the lock. Now I could have gone super hard making some complex spring-loaded latch or something, but again, this is just a prototype. So I found a little bracket online that can fit into the side of the T-slotted frame, and a nice long bolt to slide right through it. All you have to do is position the bracket just right so that the bolt can catch the back of the motor when in animatronic mode. Pull the pin out, and the spring will pull the motor away, disengaging the gears and turning it back into suit mode. Now, obviously in a full suit, this would be a lot of work to do for every single spring lock. So the next obvious step would be to create an easy way to push all the motors forward and lock them in place at the same time. In the games, they talk about the spring locks needing to be cranked, and hey, turns out there's a mechanism called a slider crank that would actually be perfect for this. But I think it's wise to make sure that this system actually works before designing all that. So maybe in a future video. But for now, I mean, there it is. A very basic spring lock joint. We got a few brackets and rods to act as the frame, a simple joint with a bevel gear on the end, and a sliding servo motor that can lock into place with a bolt in the back, and a spring to pull it back when the bolt is removed. And I'll admit, this design isn't perfect. Aside from the automation part, it could also be made a lot less bulky with some more custom parts, but as a proof of concept prototype, this'll good and gosh darn do it. And hey, check it out. First of all, waterproof, right? Edwin was making like a big deal in new games. Oh, my spring locks aren't sensitive to water, but like, I don't even understand how you could possibly make this weak to water. Like, what'd you do? How'd you do that? And upside number 2, nothing ever enters this middle zone, which means that this will never result in this. So, I'd say that's a bit of an improvement. Now let's get down to brass tacks. In the next episode, we're gonna try and build this thing for real. Now normally I'd make these bracket parts out of a light metal, like aluminum, but I think I'm actually gonna try to get them 3D printed. Now they won't be as strong, but for a simple prototype, I think it's gonna end up being a lot cheaper and easier. But I'm still deciding on that, so I don't have a quote or price or anything for that. As for all of our standard components, I ran the numbers, and not including all the hardware like screws and bolts that I can probably get for cheap in bulk at a hardware store, this one elbow is gonna cost me a cool $177.93. So hey, my Patreon's linked in the description down below. But of course, this isn't a detailed design show and tell, it's a detailed design review. DDSATs are so last year, or like DD Sats if you're a Star Wars fan who likes to be wrong. My point is, what do you think? Are there any glaring problems that I missed? Ways that I can make it slimmer or cheaper? Want me to, I don't know, like tape a gun to it to add some of that danger back in? Let me know. I mean, I'm not gonna do it, but let me know. Also, a fair warning, there's probably going to be a bit of a bigger gap before the grand finale to account for the parts shipping and the bit where I inevitably realize that I made some huge mistake and have to redesign a whole bunch of stuff. But while you wait, I post new videos bringing math and science to your favorite video games every single Friday. And hey, you made it all the way to the end of this one. I think you'll probably like it. So hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out, and keep an eye out for a thumbnail of me with my arm in a big metal death contraption making this sort of face. There's probably like some stolen game theory font down here or something. And of course, a massive thank you to all my supporters on Patreon, including Alex, Alakazam, Big Dog Tie for to win, Captain Kirby, Sidian, Sherry and Mark, Stylish, The Boss Killer 94, Ty Studio, and Moki Ubu.